world of gaming can be defined by consoles, franchises, and companies, but for some it can also be defined by years. If one were to mention a specific 12-month period, die-hard gamers will be instantly transported to their favourites from that time. Now, the million-dollar question: which years are the best for the games industry? Well, I'm Si for WhatCulture.com, and these are the 15 best years in gaming history. Number 15, 2002. Once the Xbox, PlayStation 2 and GameCube were all released, the heat was on. The PS2 may have conquered its rivals in terms of sales, but one cannot deny how every system had plenty to offer, especially in 2002. The GameCube had an astonishing collection that year, including Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, Eternal Darkness, Animal Crossing and Resident Evil Remake. Mere months after the Xbox was launched, it dropped Splinter Cell, Morrowind and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. Sony meanwhile put out Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper and of course GTA Vice City. With the release of Warcraft 3, Mafia and Medieval Total War, everything was coming up roses for PC users. Number 14, 2004. In 2004, all eyes were on the PC. After a grueling wait, Half-Life 2 landed on the scene, picking up every gaming award you could possibly imagine. But PC gamers were spoilt for choice since World of Warcraft was released just 1 week later. Simply put, this open world title from Blizzard changed MMORPGs forever. Its focus on character progression and team-based raids helped WoW become one of the most addictive games of all time. And if you were a console gamer, you didn't really have to worry either. Back in 2004, there was something for everybody. FPS fans had Far Cry, Unreal Tournament 2004 and Counter-Strike Source. Racing fans got Burnout 3 and Need for Speed Underground 2. Remarkably, tentpole AAA franchises The Legend of Zelda and Metal Gear Solid both put out 2 titles. And of course, this was the year that Halo 2 was mainstream news as it set launch day records for not just video games, but entertainment across the board. Number 13, 1992. Street Fighter 2 is looked back on as the supreme ruler of the fighting game genre of the 90s, but did you know that it was only uncontested for a year before Ed Boon and John Tobias unleashed Mortal Kombat onto the world? Due to the digitized sprites, finishing moves and boundless gore, MK was making a killing, no pun intended, at the arcade. Sega continued to rival Nintendo this year, bringing Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which improved on every aspect of its predecessor, and other gems like Streets of Rage 2, Echo the Dolphin, and Road Rash 2. Rather than tossing out another Mario platformer to stay on top of the competition, Nintendo devised a racing spin-off starring the mustachioed mascot. Super Mario Kart proved to be a triumph. It was also a monumental year for PC owners due to the release of Dune 2. Not only was this a fantastic game, it was the first recognised real-time strategy title. Command & Conquer, StarCraft and Warcraft owe their success and their very existence to this underrated classic. Number 12, 2011. With the benefit of hindsight, it's apparent that many 2011 titles had a staggering influence on the industry. Dark Souls popularised the Soulsborne genre, LA Noire pushed motion capture to the brink, The Binding of Isaac perfected the roguelike shooter formula. On top of that, Minecraft became the best-selling video game in history. With the successes of Dead Space 2, The Witcher 2, Uncharted 3, Deus Ex Human Revolution, well, it seemed like every sequel at the time was knocking it out of the park. Having said that, this lot live in the shadow of 2011's magnum opus, Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The fact you instinctively think of Skyrim when you hear the word open world, and maybe even 2011 in fact, goes to show how insurmountable its legacy is. With its well-designed, illustrious visuals and innovative character perk system, Skyrim never stopped wowing audiences. Number 11, 1994. In the early 90s, it looked like Sega had a decent chance of replacing Nintendo as the granddaddy of gaming. However, those concerns were put to rest in 94 when Nintendo literally upped their game. Donkey Kong Country's magnificent pre-rendered graphics, smooth gameplay and focus on hidden secrets re-established the tie-wearing ape as a top-tier franchise. Although Final Fantasy has revolutionized the RPG genre time and time again, the 6th installment is still regarded as a wonder to behold. Earthbound may have not garnered much praise at the time, but it's now viewed as the Super Nintendo's most underrated title. Also, Super Metroid. Enough said, right? Now that's not suggesting Sega wasn't bringing their A-game. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles proved the original 2D Sonic series went out on a high, but there's no question it was the year when Nintendo came back swinging. Number 10, 1991. No matter what genre of game you love, 1991 had you covered. There was adventure with A Link to the Past, puzzle strategy with Lemmings, beat-em-ups had Streets of Rage, and also there was Battletoads, the game you love and hate in equal measure. But there were two titles that deserve special mention. Despite coming out over 30 years ago, Street Fighter II is still the template for versus titles. Capcom's impeccable fighter popularised 3-round matches, projectiles, grappling, special moves, counters, combos, and yelling your attacks out as you perform them. 91 was also the year where Sega unleashed its secret weapon upon the world, Sonic the Hedgehog. With the simple controls and blinding speed of our hero, it was impossible not to be in awe of Sega's new mascot. The fact that modern gamers are still virtually downloading these decades-old games demonstrates how influential they've been. Number 9, 2017. With the abysmal failure of Nintendo's Wii U, gamers were skeptical about its successor, the Nintendo Switch. Fortunately, Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild shut the naysayers up immediately. The instant Breath of the Wild was released, it was lavished with universal praise, and having both of their biggest mascots come back in the same year was huge for Nintendo's re-emergence. But the Big N wasn't the only company that had a return to form. Resident Evil 7 rejuvenated Capcom's Zombie Saga, Cuphead became one of the biggest indie releases ever, Battle Royale titles made a massive comeback thanks to PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. With so many good games, it would be easy for new IPs to get lost in the shuffle. Fortunately, that wasn't the case with Horizon Zero Dawn. After playing this mesmerising open-world adventure title for a matter of minutes, you knew it was destined to become a huge franchise in Sony's portfolio. Number 8, 2001. In 2001, it seemed like all gaming franchises had stepped up a year. Although Super Smash Bros. Was a satisfying beat-em-up, Smash Bros. Melee proved Nintendo could contend with the big boys. Despite the fact that Metal Gear Solid set a high bar, MGS2's bar went beyond the stratosphere in terms of stealth, fighting mechanics, plot, and relevant social commentary. Silent Hill 2 was so astounding and petrifying that many gamers still refer to it as a perfect masterpiece, and its effect on storytelling and gaming is still felt today. Final Fantasy X immediately stood out since it was the first entry to implement skill trees, conditional turn-based battle, and voice acting. However, no franchise reinvented itself better than Grand Theft Auto. GTA 3 didn't just improve on its predecessor, it blew it out of the water. Even though the race and chase elements were still there, this threequel now boasted a massive plot, a plethora of missions, and a gigantic open world to explore. Fear not Microsoft, as their debut console had a glorious start this year with one of the greatest launch titles in history. Halo was a monstrous success, almost single-handedly securing Microsoft's future in the gaming industry. Number 7, 2007. Although 2007 wasn't the peak of gaming, it probably spawned more successful franchises than any other year. Think about it, this was the first time we performed parkour around cities in Assassin's Creed, warped around test chambers in Portal, jammed like there was no tomorrow in Rock Band, tossed a coin for The Witcher, waged war against the Reapers in Mass Effect, hunted for treasure in Uncharted, and faced a Big Daddy in Bioshock. Even though 2007 was defined by brand new IPs, that doesn't mean recognised series weren't giving it their all. Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4 were showered with praise, especially for their multiplayer, and Team Fortress 2 was such a hit it still receives server support from Valve even after 16 years. Since Nintendo had released the Wii the previous year, gamers knew a new Mario installment was inevitable. Not only did Super Mario Galaxy receive universal acclaim, it remained the highest rated game on game rankings until its foreclosure in 2019. Number 6, 1996. Not only did 1996 demonstrate how far video games had come, it gave us a good idea of what the future would behold. Pokemon Red and Blue popularised data transferring between players and reinvigorated the handheld market. New IPs like Crash Bandicoot and Tomb Raider won our hearts and demonstrated the significance of 3D gaming. But let's be honest, you can't talk about the influence 1996 games had on the industry without mentioning Super Mario 64. The Nintendo 64's launch title was a showstopper. Super Mario 64 didn't just make the transition into 3D smoothly, it broke the mould. It was a stroke of genius for the gameplay to focus on objectives rather than reaching a goal, since it encouraged players to explore, and it remains perhaps the most important title for setting gaming's 3D blueprint. Number 5, 2005. Since nostalgia can easily cloud judgment, it's sometimes easy to wonder if we're looking on our favourite games with rose-tinted glasses. But while reflecting on 2005, you can be rest assured the lineup is just as good as you remember. Thanks to Guitar Hero, millions of players became rock stars without having to leave their living room. Because Resident Evil 4 development was scrapped on 4 separate occasions, it looked like Capcom's Undead Saga was in serious trouble. But when the long-awaited follow-up was released, it was regarded as the company's finest work. work. Although Shadow of the Colossus was hailed as the be-all and end-all at the time, it's actually gotten better over the years. When you look at Ico's crowning achievement with fresh eyes, you can see the influence it had on Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring, and God of War. Number 4, 2013. By the time 2013 reached its end, no gamer felt unsatisfied. A Link Between Worlds was probably the most innovative Zelda entry on any handheld system. Metal Gear Solid Revengeance's title doesn't make a lick of sense, but it was fun as hell. Final Fantasy XIV, which was released in 2010 originally, was abominable, but the heavily revised A Realm Reborn turned out so well, it redeemed Square Enix's folly. On top of that, the Stanley Parable, Gone Home, Papers, Please, and so many more proved indie hits could hold their own against AAA titles. However, there are 3 games that perfectly encapsulate how high the standard was in 2013: The Last of Us, Grand Theft Auto 5, and BioShock Infinite. Forget the fact that all 3 of these released in a single year, we got to experience them all within 6 months of each other. Games like this shattered the stigma of video games as brainless, since they focused more on character-driven narratives. For the first time, it felt like society was starting to recognise video games weren't just a source of leisure, but an art form. Number 3, 1987. By 1987, gaming wasn't just improving, but it was evolving. Mega Man was kind of a big deal, since it was the first game to feature non-linear level select. Final Fantasy saved the fledgling Square from calling it quits, and even though it's heavily criticised, Castlevania 2 incorporated RPG and open-world elements like NPCs, maps, and a day and night cycle into a platformer. But that's not all. Even though Super Mario Bros. Was released in 1985 originally, 87 proved to be far more significant for the Italian plumber. After all, 87 was when Super Mario Bros. Was unleashed upon the United States, and the Koopa-stomping, mushroom-grobbling hero became a global phenomenon. Even before Zelda and Metroid, this one game changed everything. Although Westerners were dubious of consoles since the North America video game crash of 83, Nintendo demonstrated video games were here to stay. Number 2, 1997. This is a period where every gaming developer and system came out a winner. Mario Kart 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and Gran Turismo dominated the racing genre. Not only did GoldenEye revolutionize first-person shooters and multiplayer, it proved games based on movies could be just as good, if not better, than the source material. 97 is a laundry list of quality, so much so it's almost laughable. Star Fox 64, Tomb Raider 2, Abe's Odyssey, Grand Theft Auto, Crash Bandicoot 2, and Parappa the Rapper earned rave reviews across the board. PC owners were in heaven since they had Fallout, Ultima Online, and Diablo to choose from. And even though Castlevania had always been a respected franchise, Symphony of the Night towered above what came before. It perfected the Castlevania layout and gameplay so perfectly, it's directly responsible for popularizing an army of Metroidvania clones. And of course, there was Final Fantasy VII. The 7th entry in Square Enix's adored series wasn't just a faultless marvel, it showed the importance of cinematic storytelling. It opened the door globally for role players and is still heralded as one of the greatest games ever made. At number 1, 1998. If you were living in 97, it looked like gaming had peaked, and of course the following year would have its work cut out for it. But in the eyes of many, 1998's mouth-watering assembly has never been bettered. With the release of Banjo-Kazooie, Crash Bandicoot Warped, and Spyro the Dragon, mascot 3D platformers were at their height. 80s kid gamers who had grown up got their hands on Tomb Raider 3, Turok 2, StarCraft, and Thief. But then there's the best of the best. Metal Gear Solid was the apex of stealth, Resident Evil 2 was the definitive survival horror, Tekken 3 was the zenith of the series, and Half-Life was a masterclass first-person shooter. And just as the year was wrapping up, Nintendo released the long awaited Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. This huge risk of bringing Link into the 3D space was touted as a masterpiece thanks to its flawless everything, really. When you look back on the perfect lineup during those 12 months, it blows the mind to see so many stone-cold classics spoiling gamers for choice. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Which of these years are your favourite? And of course, let us know of any others that we should have included. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Head over to WhatCulture.com for more content every day. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.